Long Take Review, where college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, P.T. McNiff. Jen Sobchak-Bankert is away on assignment. So today, I'm here with a man who knows how to pump up those first quarter numbers. It's Greg Cass. How's 2026 going so far, Greg?
Never mistake my kindness for weakness. I'm great, PT. I'm actually very excited to do this episode. It was your brainchild, essentially. You came up with the idea and said, let's catch up on the year thus far. But I shouldn't say anything else. But I'm excited for this episode. You have to introduce what we're doing first.
That's great. Well, I'm glad that you're excited. I'm also excited, and I'm glad that you have tacitly approved of everything that's happened in the world in 2026 through your response to my questions. But we are here with a special installment of Quick Takes, the subseries where one or more long take review hosts offer some brief, spoiler-free reactions to films they have recently seen. So if this episode was my idea, this subseries is Greg's brainchild, and so we're really bringing the work together here. Now that it's April and we have drafted the movies we are the most hyped for across the rest of 2026, we wanted to take a look back at the first 3 months of the year and discuss some of the movies we missed. When the Oscars don't happen until mid-March, it's easy for us to stay wrapped up in the previous year's films. So now is a chance to give some love to the movies we've enjoyed so far from this year. Since we're touching upon a number of movies, and since this is a Quick Takes episode, we will be keeping this episode spoiler-free throughout. And since Greg is the man who maintains his commitment to new theatrical screenings much more successfully than I do, and therefore we'll be talking a lot this episode, I won't make him do this bit by throwing it to him. And just will note, if you don't want to miss new episodes of the Long Take Review when they drop, please follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. We host the feed on Jen's Substack at thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, and many more. Wherever you're listening right now, you can find us there. You can also follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. We are also on Letterboxd. The account is at LTRpod, or you can search for the hashtag LTRpod to see what each of us individually has been watching, which includes this list of movies. Greg, before we get started, what would you like to add?
I just wanted to add that as listeners are listening to this, we've entered a Star Wars season, which means that Jen will probably be doing her reviews of the new Maul Shadow Lord show. And if you are hearing this, listeners, that means she is doing it. If you're not hearing this, it means she edited me out of the episode because she wasn't planning to write them and I plugged it. But Jen, among her many talents, is an excellent reviewer, and her write-ups on weekly Star Wars and Marvel shows are not to be missed. So we don't plug them enough in general. So if people are listening to this and you haven't, maybe you're going back and you're like, I'm going to check out that Miss Marvel finally, and you can find Jen's reviews on those. Or if you go back and want to watch Andor again, you can read her reviews of that. But she should be doing live reviews each week on, I don't know what live means, regular reviews on her Substack of the new Darth Maul cartoon. Have at, folks.
Excellent. Well, I fully endorse, co-sign that, Greg. Yeah, her reviews are excellent. And I mean, in many ways, the real reason to go to her website. And then we are just a little bonus that's sprinkled on top. So we have a list. We've assembled together a list of movies that at least one of us has seen, but wanted to put a couple of sort of asterisks out there of like movies we're not going to talk about. The first one being maybe the biggest. It's certainly the biggest at the box office, and maybe it was the biggest culturally so far this year, which is Project Hail Mary. Greg, why are we not talking about that movie in this episode?
Because it's terrible. No, because we already talked about it and we were very enthusiastic about it. That is, if I were to rank purely on all the movies I've seen this year so far, Project Hail Mary would be number one. I've now been a second time since we recorded, and I was worried about it would drag the second watch, but it worked just as well on me the second time around. So we recorded that episode previously, right on release weekend. So please go check that out there. PT, you've been very kind about talking about my viewing habits, but there's also a chunk of movies you watched that aren't going to be represented here. Do you want to explain that?
Yes, there were another previous episode that you could go back to. Our 2026 movies that have not gotten a wide release yet, but they were shown during the online component of this year's Sundance Film Festival. And once at Future Fourth Chair, Antonio Elefano and myself did a quick takes episode a couple months back where we talked about those movies. We talked about movies such as Josephine was the big prize winner there, and I think was the highlight of that, as well as oh god, a Nuisance Bear. I was like, a movie about a bear. That was a documentary. Nuisance Bear. That was also quite good. And then some other movies that were in there as well that we saw and we discussed. So yes, if when you're done listening to this episode, you were like, wow, why couldn't there just have been more content? Don't worry. You can go back and you can listen to the Project Hail Mary episode, and you can listen to the Sundance episode to get some more 2026 love for movies in your ears. So now, speaking of 2026 movies, Greg, there was one movie that we were uncertain if we should put it on, but we've ruled it's a 2025 movie, but it didn't really get widely released until this year. So we're going to put it out before the list. Greg, which movie is that?
This, of course, would be a wonderful A24 release, which is Pelion, starring Alexander Skarsgård and, Henry. He played the Henry Neville, I want to say. PT will check me, but Melling. He played Dudley.
It's Harry Melling.
I was so close. Henry Neville or Harry Melling.
Old Henry Neville.
Harry Neville. No, okay. I think maybe there's some Harry Potter I got confused on, and I went Neville instead of Melling. So Harry Melling is actually an awesome actor, and people may remember him from the Coen Brothers film, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. He played in the sub film. He and Liam Neeson were a traveling pair of kind of a sideshow act, and he played a man who could sing really well but had no arms and legs in that movie. So Pelion is an awesome movie, and so it is I think it's fair to say a rom-com in kind of some traditional and some very non-traditional ways about a dom and a sub who form a relationship and have, shenanigans ensue, both the ones you expect and the ones you don't. So this was a really wonderful film. So why we were debating whether it should be included or not is it had a kind of epic festival run, and it started, I think, at Cannes. And I was fortunate enough to go to a screening with the director, and this was in January, and he's like, I've been promoting this nonstop since May. I'm kind of tired. And I think that kind of speaks to all the accolades it had gotten. PT did kind of do the investigation and found it did have enough of a theatrical run that it was up for Indie Spirit Awards. So it should not be eligible for Oscars next year. So it counts as a 2025 movie release, even though A24 did not release it until, I believe, Valentine's Day weekend. And I since I'm the one who will see it, I won't talk much more about it, but I will just say, it's probably a little out there for some people, but it's like a surprisingly sweet and sentimental movie based around that kind of relationship. And I would say I'm not an expert on the leather subculture of the gay men's scene in the UK, or I wasn't, and now I feel like I am, because it's a really interesting portrait of that. And it was right at, I saw Skarsgård 2 weekends in a row because I saw Pelion and then I saw The Moment with Charlie XCX, which didn't make the episode list, but is also a movie that came out so far in 2026. So Skarsgård's off to a banging start, pun very much intended.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I feel like I've only heard good things about this movie. I will say, I do need to note, we're obviously this is unfolding live, so I don't know if this would change it, or we would alter this to say this is now part of the list. It's the British Independent Film Awards, where it was nominated a bunch and won a few prizes. It got Best British Independent Film and Best Debut Screenwriter, as well as a couple below the line awards. So maybe it would be eligible for Oscars if they tried to campaign it, but it has that issue sort of, it might end up in the similar as the Tourette's movie, which
I swear, I was just going to say, it's a reverse I swear situation.
Yes. Yeah. Where it's, it may be eligible now, but maybe eligible for Oscars now, but it is so tied to the last season. The campaigning was all happening, during this last Oscar race. But all right, a borderline case, but a worthy recommendation, and presumably, as I think you said, that's A24. So that will make it to HBO at some point in the next little bit. So
I would expect it very soon. It's been on PVOD for a little while, so
okay.
So I bet it's within a week or two.
Excellent. Are there we also we have a little list here. Nothing's better in a podcast episode than referring to the written documents prepared for the podcast episode. But there's a little list of the movies that are in the top 15 of the box office that are not on our list and are not carryovers from 2025. Is there anything you'd like to mention, Greg, as the person who has gone to see almost all of these movies? Are there any of them you would like to note?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I think is my thesis for tonight is that 2026 has done a good job of already being like a 4-quadrant year. There maybe isn't until Project Hail Mary, that one movie the whole family can go see together. The whole family is not going to Pillion, or shouldn't, unless you want to have awkward conversations. But we have had a variety of hits in kind of the different demos. So far this year, it's been a big year for horror releases. Not a lot have lit the critics on fire, but horror continues to be like a solid set of performers. The top one of these being Scream 7 so far, which I thought was pretty poor, and there's some behind the scenes shenanigans in that franchise that made this one a little bit of a retreat away from the new next generation cast, and kind of, wouldn't you like to see Neve Campbell again? Let's talk about Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox again. So, PT, have you kept up with the Scream movies? Where did you jump out?
I watched the last two, but not I didn't go see them in the theaters. I don't know if I've ever seen Screams 3 or 4. I definitely watched the first two back in the day. And then I think I probably watched 3, but I don't know if I've seen 4.
I think 4 is that lost one, right? It's like somewhere way out in the middle of the two trilogies now, essentially.
Right. It was kind of a soft reboot maybe in the 2000s, but then it didn't really go anywhere.
I want to say Hayden Panettiere is there on the strength of her Heroes debut, which very much dates it to a particular moment in pop culture, unless people are still thinking about Heroes anytime. So not something I would recommend unless you're really devoted to Scream 7. But, there was that. There was Ready or Not 2, and there's a Zazie Beetz movie out now I haven't gotten to yet called They're Going to Kill You. And all of those are kind of filling in some horror boxes this year so far. And then there's been 2 big kids releases. Goat, which is a sports ball movie that seems to be a kind of take on Zootopia, but basketball, and it's shaped by a pro basketball player. And I have not seen this, but reviews were okay, and it has actually kind of chugged along to pretty good box office. And then the 2 other kids releases were Hoppers, Avatar, but make it Pixar, which my kids thought was fine, but haven't ever thought about since we left that movie theater. And then we are recording in the very Technicolor wake of Super Mario Brothers Galaxy, which is just making all the money in the world. I'm sure if it hasn't passed Project Hail Mary yet, it's on its way to being the #1 grossing movie of the year, and may keep that title despite some of those heavy hitters we recruited in Hype Draft earlier this year. So it's fine. I think, if you like Mario games and you want to see references to Mario games, my Mario Galaxy story is I sat, my 2 kids were to my left, and there was a woman to my right, I would probably say early 20s, and every single thing that appeared, she went, "Oh, Goombas, that's a Goomba. Oh, Koopa, that's a Koopa. Oh, there's Yoshi." And I was sitting there like, oh my God, she's just not stopping. And I realized that's the key demo of this kind of movie. It's like, trying to capture some of those kids that grew up on those games and maybe have not gone to movies lately because they're in their 20s, and that's a lower movie demographic. And just giving them the pure remember berries of, oh, I once jumped on that creature. And I thought this one was a poor substitute for the first one, which actually was pretty clever with the Mario property. So my lukewarm if you got to take your kids, go for it. Endorsement of Mario Galaxy.
Great. So it's the Leo pointing meme, the movie.
Yes, endlessly. And at one point, they even basically play an original Nintendo game on screen. And you're like, okay, yep, that's exactly. I remember those pixels in that order. So
I know, yeah, you got to jump on the flag. I see. I will just note for listeners who might want this picked up, the player, the NBA player behind GOAT is Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. That's his creative brainchild, and he produced it. And presumably the titular GOAT that becomes good at playing basketball by shooting very far away from the net and scoring a lot of points is based on him, because that's what he's good at. And the rumor is the sort of antagonist is based on LeBron, even though they made a lot of changes to make it not look like LeBron. But yeah, I mean, I have not seen any of these movies, but I have heard that, basically what you said. I feel like you're being nicer to the Mario Galaxy movie than maybe some of the things I have seen, but I can't really speak any more to it. So I'm glad.
I would just say of GOAT, my 10-year-old son, when the trailer played, I think before probably Hopper, something we saw, he and I saw that trailer, and he turned to me and goes, I think I'll wait for streaming. It's like, oh man, that is damning from a 10-year-old who would love to go to the movies and get junk food and so on. So, and I will just note the last one on the list is Wuthering Heights. I think that movie has been, dragged sufficiently by other venues. I think if you want a kind of fun period romance that's maybe a little sexy, but kind of still somewhat chaste, go for it. If you want Wuthering Heights, as in I love that book, do not go for it. It has very little resemblance to the actual book, Wuthering Heights. So I'm not even letting PT comment on Wuthering Heights. So as we move now to our main list, we just want to say that we will be using the quick takes format, which is that we will do our best to keep this spoiler free. Our kind of rule of thumb we've agreed upon ahead of time is to only stick to what's visible from the trailer or what's well known about a property, or, who's in it or who creatively shaped it. I think everybody is different in their spoiler tolerance. So if you really want to go in cold to some of these movies, we will clearly state the title of the movie before we begin to talk about it, so you can skip whatever you need to. But we will kind of try to keep this mainly to our main impression. If we want to do a little recommendation algorithm, we could gesture that way. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say there won't need to be a lot of Oscar talk, but maybe I will be surprised, and PT has some real takes ready to go. But based on our hype draft and how many Oscar level movies we're anticipating in the fall, I think this crop probably won't yield a lot of Oscars, but that doesn't mean we're not fun. I mean, Jen's original tagline for the show was "One eye always on the Oscar race." And that's just a reminder that the other eye is looking at fun stuff. And we appreciate blockbusters as much as we appreciate the critical gems and darlings, especially now that Antonio's gone. That really shifts the percentages over to the blockbuster crowd.
Loud franchises, just popcorn movies constantly is all we're going to talk about now. Okay, well, let's begin with the first movie we have on the list, which is Gore Verbinski's Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. I have not seen this movie, so Greg, you get to talk about it. Tell us about it, and what did you think?
So Gore Verbinski, as you noted, who hasn't been around in a minute, I don't think. He took a little time and was working on other projects. I remember him most recently from Rango, right? He was behind the animated film, and Lucasfilm was tied into that as well. Or not Lucasfilm, but ILM, I believe, Industrial Light and Magic. So I will admit, though I have not seen Three Billboards, I'm so sorry, dear listener Anthony. I will get to this film eventually, but I have not seen his Academy Award-winning performance. But I have a real soft spot for Sam Rockwell. I feel like he's one of those actors just out there doing really interesting work every time. And I have rarely seen a film that he doesn't elevate when he's in. So I went to this film really on the strength of seeing his face on the poster. And I wasn't entirely sure, based on the very strange poster image, what I was getting myself into. So the basic premise of Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die is we catch up with a time traveler who's trying to save the world, and we catch him on his 100th or so kind of Groundhog Day runaround. So the movie begins with him immediately recruiting, and him already being in that late stage Groundhog Day where he knows everybody's name and history and all of that. Kind of flavored more like the Palm Springs version of Groundhog Day than so on. And I thought this movie was a ton of fun. I will not say that it hit the heights. These are, listener, our movies tonight are roughly from our least favorite to our most favorite. And so this one snuck onto the list here for me because I thought the real selling point here is the extended cast. So we have Sam Rockwell at the center. We have Zazie Beetz, who's always really good. Michael Pena is in this, kind of doing his a little bit of his Ant-Man shtick within that. And you have Juno Temple from many things, but particularly Ted Lasso. You know, I think she kind of got a bump up in fame from that. And the film itself is really a fun play on the time travel genre. And the games it wants to play are when you cross time travel with that kind of extreme Groundhog Day kind of fun. It works really well, and you know you're kind of guessing on all the twists and turns all the way through. So, like I said, it doesn't hit the heights because I don't think it totally stuck the landing. It's got some third act problems, but I will say the opening scene is in a classic LA diner, which really made me go, I need to go visit PT, Jen, and Antonio and go to a classic LA diner instead of just recognizing them from Pulp Fiction and Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die.
There are even a few that are still open that have not closed in the last 10 years. Yeah, this one looked really fun, and I definitely had it on mind. It's now at the point where it's like, well, I'm probably not going to spend $20 to rent it. Maybe I'll catch it when it's on streaming or when it's down to maybe $6. I will just note, for lack of anything else to say, Gore Verbinski, if people who maybe don't fully recognize his name, most famous, I think, for the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy.
I think that's
the first three movies. But he also did the American version of The Ring. He did Durango. He did the reason why maybe we haven't heard from him in a little while is he had back-to-back the movie version of The Lone Ranger, which has one great set piece and not a lot else going on for it in terms of its
and a side of racism. But yes,
well, yes, and also two main actors, both of whom very quickly fell out of favor in the culture. And then a movie called A Cure for Wellness, which is not The Road to Wellville, which is what I thought it was when I clicked on it, which is a movie from the early 90s that wouldn't have made any sense. But it's somewhat inspired by Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain. And he's trying to, like, someone is trying to get like a company CEO away from a remote mountain rehabilitation center. Went. It took him 9 years to make another movie. I don't know what's going on with that, but it's good. It's good that Gore has returned, and that, like, you know, I think those time loop movies are always fun. So,
and it feels like it's the kind of movie that would have been just a streaming release and it got a theatrical. And I'm sorry it didn't make more money, but I do think the talent involved definitely made it worthwhile. Although some of the, like, with no disrespect to Juno Temple, she's kind of like oh yeah, that person's on TV, so she stars in a streaming movie level star. But there's some good talent there. So I have last I saw it, like you said, it's only on premium video on demand, but I imagine it will hit one of the streaming services soon, and it's well worth your click, if not your dollars.
Yeah. Let me look at the distributed by Briarcliff Entertainment. I don't know where Briarcliff movies go. I can't help with that. Never mind. I thought it'd be like, it's going to be on this service. Keep an eye out for it.
Feels like a Hulu. I'm going a shot in the dark. I'm going to say, let's guess Hulu.
Yeah. Hulu is sort of the other when it's just like, we got everyone else. But speaking of movies you can watch on a streaming service, our next one is the documentary Man on the Run. This is directed by Morgan Neville, a documentarian who I think is most known for 20 Feet from Stardom, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature, as well as Won't You Be My Neighbor, the Mr. Rogers documentary, and he has done a bunch of others about different subjects. This is a documentary about and produced by Paul McCartney, discussing essentially the decade of his life that he was in the band Wings, which coincides with the decade after the Beatles broke up. So it begins with the end of the Beatles and runs through. It's an interesting sort of moments, and this is not a spoiler because it's history, that like within the span of about 14 months, Paul McCartney stops the band Wings, releases a solo album for the first time since right after the Beatles, and then John Lennon is murdered. So it's the time encompassing those two big bookmarks, and it's quite fun. Morgan Neville really good at assembling things together. Paul McCartney writes really good songs. He likes to tell stories about it. This is not a movie where you watch Paul McCartney today talking about what happened in the past. It's all footage from the 70s with voiceovers of recent recorded interviews with Paul McCartney, and then recordings from throughout different points of history, because there's voices of people who are like, that person hasn't been alive for a long time. So that must not be a new recording, but whatever. It's an archival interview. And the story is told very smoothly. And, whenever there is a documentary and the subject of the documentary is also a main producer of it, there's a little bit of like, okay, well, now they get to sort of tell their version of the history. And there's certainly a few things where it's like, and then this controversy happened, and there's a little bit of like, this is what people were saying then, and then it is, here's Paul McCartney giving his like final say about it. Which is, like you can kind of see through that, or, see through the process a little bit to be like, okay, Paul, especially when it's talking, it doesn't spend too much time with it, but it does dip occasionally into the legal struggles between the members of the Beatles through the first half of the 70s. And there's a lot of just sort of like, but wasn't I always right? Or, was I really the bad guy? It's like, oh, okay, Paul. But, my big takeaway from this is I would have probably liked multiple documentaries, but like a documentary that focused on a more concentrated period of time, like maybe just the first few years after the Beatles broke up, or maybe just after the Wings sort of hit their stride and started touring, the mid 70s through 1980, that like there was more there. It was like we'd suddenly be on another subject. We'd suddenly be in 1976. It's like, really, we're done with everything the year before. But that said, that's not to say it's not like a very good time if you have any interest in Paul McCartney, in classic rock, in 70s music, 70s culture. If you just like very famous people trying to massage their legacy to look as nice and positive and smooth as possible, then I think this is a good time. And it's up on Amazon Prime. It's a MGM Amazon movie, or maybe just an Amazon movie. I don't even know if MGM is technically involved. But it's up streaming on Prime if you have that. And if you don't want to listen to it, there's a book that is that's out that Paul at least co-wrote, and there's a box set and a single disc set of Best of the Wings that's based on this. So there's plenty of overlapping Paul McCartney ephemera for you to take in if you would like to. This is the one you haven't seen, right, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I really intended to get to it this afternoon, and just duty called at work. But I had actually, before I saw you were adding this to our list, I had said like, oh, I'd heard another review, and I was like, I think I want to check that out. I am, my parents liked the Beatles, but it's not like the Beatles were always on in our house. I remember the moment one came out on CD, and it was like the Beatles were suddenly in our lives again, because my parents were nostalgic for it, especially my mom. My parents have a little age gap, and she's like was a teenager exactly when the British invasion hit. And so I don't have the strong association with the Beatles. And I especially realized, so I actually hit play on this afternoon before something took me away from the living room. And like when you start to hear Paul singing silly love songs, it's like, I don't actually have good knowledge of what's a Beatles song and what's a Paul McCartney song. Like that's my failure as a music fan. So I was already like, oh, I'd actually really like to check this out. And I think my wife and I were just talking about this because we have the impending Sam Mendes Beatle quadrilogy coming, and I was debating with her like who, people who are Beatles fans are a fan of a Beatle usually. You're like, which one are you, right? In a lot of ways, and I think I'm a Paul guy. I think that's the guy I gravitate to. And my wife and I went and saw him at Fenway 4 or 5 years ago, and you're like, dang, he's like 75 and he's got more energy on stage than I do, like on my best day. So I'm really excited to check this out. And I think this kind of Beatles moment is really interesting in all the ways you just articulated, which is like, I think all the two that are still living, both of them are kind of trying to set their legacy and the legacy of the band a little differently than it was. And Get Back was obviously kind of a watershed moment in some of the work Peter Jackson is doing to restore audio and video. I think is really kind of fascinating and really interesting. Actually, when I saw Paul McCartney live, he had audio tracks that Peter Jackson had restored of John, and he did a duet with John's audio track. And like, it was like lame and kind of just a plug for a Disney Plus documentary, but I was tearing up because he made it feel like he was getting to sing with his best friend again. And, I hear you saying they're rehabilitating all of that a little bit, trying to smooth out the roughness. And I've heard that other places as well, that, Yoko and Paul seem to have come to some agreements about what they say publicly and what they don't. And I kind of am here for it. I think they're such an important part of music history. I forgive it in ways I wouldn't other times.
Right. It's like, if anyone's going to do it, it's like, okay, you've earned it. You put the work in. I've seen Paul a few times over, oh my gosh, now over 20 plus years. But yeah, the last time I saw him, I think he also had that, he did the duet with John. It was one of the rooftop songs from the last Beatles concert. So but yeah, that show was such, like, I thought it was such a huge flex, at least when I saw it, because the, like, quote unquote opening act was a DJ who was mixing Paul McCartney and Beatles songs. And it was like, each time there was a song, it was like, all right, that's off the table because they've already played it. Like, the DJ played it. Then the DJ left. He just sunk into the stage. And there was a 30-minute intro video that was another half hour of snippets of Beatles songs and then Paul McCartney songs and Wings songs and all that. And it was just like, okay, well, he's not going to do that one because we've already heard it. We've already heard it. Then he came out and did 3 hours and you didn't miss any of the songs because he just has 10 hours of songs.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. And one last thing I'll say before this becomes a Beatles episode accidentally is I think you're right that there is this sort of like, which one are you? Are you a Ringo? Or you whatever? And one of the things that I think this the documentary does do a good job with, that I feel like is maybe lost a little bit over time, is how much in those years after the Beatles, it was very much like Paul McCartney's the bad guy. Like, Paul McCartney, and he's the one who's failing. He's the one who's doing a bad job of being an ex-Beatle. Everyone else has done okay. And there's at one point, there's a clip of Elton John from the early 70s being like, oh yeah, John's done the best album in Imagine. And George's album, All Things Must Pass, was incredible. And Ringo did a pretty fun album too. It was okay. But all of Paul's albums are bad. And we don't know why. Like, why is Paul so bad? And it's all these albums that now people are like, oh yeah, that's an amazing album from the early 70s. Yeah. But at the time, it wasn't liked. And I remember through when I was learning about the Beatles growing up, that it was like, John's cool. But which, I mean, this is terrible to say. It also helped he was dead, so we couldn't say anything uncool anymore. But It was like John was always the coolest, and then Paul was always like lame. And the fact that he was still around, like doing new music that people didn't like as much, was a problem. But now I think over time, stuff that Paul has done has resonated and had all this carried forward in new music over time. Plus, he gets to be the elder statesman that is running around and still playing and having amazing energy into his 80s and playing 3 hours.
Yeah, and jumping on the SNL 50th last year, and obviously being a part of that show with his friendship with Lorne and so on. So yeah, it does feel like he's moved into the elder statesman role really nicely. And just remind me, we're still 2 years away from the 4 Beatles movies?
That's correct, I believe. It's 2028.
And they're really going to be 4 Fridays in a row, right?
It's either 4 Fridays in a row or it's 8 weeks, and it's every other week a new one will come out.
It's just crazy to think about.
What's unclear is if it's going to be like, the John movie will be the first 2 or 3 years of the Beatles, and then it will be the George
Right.
movie, or if it's going to be the whole story each time, but from different perspectives. I don't
Either
know.
could be fascinating, and
Yes.
I'm cynical, but yet also I will be there every Friday if that's what they ask of me, or every Thursday night to see it quick and be there.
Yes. And it's then possible it might be like, all right, now we're closing the door on baby boomer culture. Like nothing else can celebrate the boomers. You've had it. You did it. We're never talking about Vietnam or
Yep.
the British invasion ever again. Goodbye. Greg, what's next?
Well, that will be exciting. All right, let's move on to one of the movies we both saw. Although, as I clicked over to our doc, it just randomly closed. But I believe the next one is a really campy movie. So I'm gonna go ahead and start my short take by saying I'm gonna endorse this one, but I kind of am ashamed of myself for endorsing it as high as I am. So the movie, because I did promise we would say the movie title right away, is Send Help, which is a new Sam Raimi film, which stars Rachel McAdams as a really, unbelievable frumpish woman who then turns into an island hottie. What? She took off her glasses and let her hair down, and she was actually beautiful the whole time. Somehow, still works on elder millennials. We're there for it. So this movie, as I said, is kind of a campy good time about a woman who's very underappreciated and made fun of in her office, and then again sticking to the trailer rule. There is then a plane crash of a corporate jet, and she and her boss are the sole survivors who wash up on an island and have to survive. And thankfully, Rachel McAdams' character has been a Survivor mega fan for so many years and learned all the survival techniques that she can rule the island. So I will also jump right into recommendation algorithm. This is Sam Raimi doing Triangle of Sadness, and a lot of the beats are kind of similar and yet different because it's Sam Raimi. And I found myself laughing really hard at this. It is certainly cheesy. You see, I would say the majority of the twists coming in advance, but I would still say put it on and have a good time because it's a lot of fun.
This is high on the cackle meter for me. Like I had a great time with this. For listeners who maybe recognize the name or don't recognize the name, but or hear it and are like, oh, that guy. I feel like Sam Raimi has like a few waves of his career. He had he started off the Evil Dead guy, and he did 3 Evil Dead movies, and then kind of mixed with the end of that. There was his 90s where he's got like trying different things: Darkman, Quick and the Dead, A Simple Plan, The Gift. Then he's has been kind of a franchisey guy. He did the 3 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, which I think there's some differing opinions out there. I know Greg rewatched one recently and gave it a middling review or a middling star rating on Letterboxd. I still think Spider-Man 2 is maybe one of the best superhero movies.
It's superior to the first, but
sure,
and
I agree.
Again, can't be fun. He knew what he was making and did it well. So
and he returned. He was also in director jail for a little while after Oz the Great and Powerful, which was. Not good. Definitely not a good movie. Not a bounce back from Spider-Man 3. But he came back after a decade away with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, a Marvel movie people really bumped up against. But what I really liked the parts of that came across like a Sam Raimi movie. And so this is him. This is him sort of like embracing a genre story. It's not something that he wrote like the Evil Dead movies and Darkman, some of those earlier ones. But he took a script that was out there, was like, yes, I want to do this, and kind of put some of my flavor on it. And there's not like necessarily all the visual components that you might expect from a more pure, maybe quote unquote pure Sam Raimi experience. But that energy, that verve, and there's some way in which he takes this pulpy fun and he takes these characters, but he also has an interesting way of taking characters that are unlikable and kind of making you like them, and then characters you like but having them do things that are unlikable that like really kind of blurs some lines and crosses some things over. The Raimi movie reminded me the most of in that regard, or at least in the feel of it, was Drag Me to Hell, which was his most recent non-franchise. It was between Spider-Man 3 and the Oz movie. And that was sort of a similar kind of story with a character that you were like, I feel sympathy for this person. They're being put upon. It was a woman who's being kind of dumped on all the time at work and at home, and just things aren't really going very well. And then a series of events happen, and you have to follow along with them and see the choices they make, and be like, oh, was that the right choice? And then after a little while, be like, oh, I guess it wasn't, because this didn't go very well. So, and sometimes it does work, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think he has it. That's an interesting little corner he's carved out for himself in the last, I guess at this point, last like 15 or more years of these movies. That I think it's a real two-hander between Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien. Of many movies, but I still think of him as from Saturday Night, as he was great as Dan Aykroyd in Saturday Night. And they're the two who are stuck on the island. He's the like nepo baby, mean, evil corporate boss who never valued her, and she's the person who knows how to live on this island and seeing how things unfold. And it's I do not have the reservations you have of endorsing this one. I'm like, this one's great, while recognizing that are probably a bunch of people who would be like, oh, I don't know. So if there was anything in that list of Sam Raimi movies that you were like, oh, I did kind of like that, then maybe there's something there for you to hold on to. But I think if there's anything in the description that Greg gave that you were like, oh, that could be fun, it's worth checking out. It has some really great moments that I regret I did watch it at home instead of seeing it in a theater. I bet this would have had some really fun pops in the theater.
Yeah, I will. During the plane crash that was mentioned, and again is in the trailer, so we're not spoiling. There's a really gnarly kill, and that to me is when the audience started cackling, and we all knew exactly what kind of movie we were in for, and it worked really well, and everybody was excited. So, my reservation, to keep it spoiler free, I'll just say I think there's maybe one too many twists in this. I agree with you that the sense of making the kind of blurring the line of who's likable or not worked really well, and then there's like one or two. But I will say the very ending, the resolution, I thought was just a beautiful moment and joke, and it totally worked. So, big picture, when they use this to talk about like Hollywood stars that Hollywood hasn't done right by. And I completely agree that Rachel McAdams is just one of those stars who's always great to see. I always found it mind blowing that she was, all her roles. And then it was like, wait, she's the person who's the lead plastic in the Mean Girls. Like, she can just kind of transform herself. And I know she got kind of some good notes on Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, most recently. And she has a couple rom-coms that are always just hanging out on Letterboxd. About Time, I think, is the name of it, with Domhnall Gleeson. And every once in a while, the Harrison Ford, is it Morning Glory, where she's the producer of his AM Good Morning America type show. And like, again, those are not like great movies I'm telling people to rush out to, but you're like, dang, I like Rachel McAdams. And it's not just a crush. Like, I do think she's always reliable and quite good. So,
and we can't forget The Notebook.
I mean, true. I only recently saw that. There was a hole, but in my viewing, but yes, a beloved classic.
There's a demographic that is not you or me, that for which The Notebook is a foundational text, and of course, she's the random prop up girlfriend in both Doctor Strange movies, which is why this movie exists, because Sam Raimi said, I want to actually use Rachel McAdams, which I cannot do in the second Doctor Strange movie, and then went out to find a script where he could do that. And that's where he found this one. So,
the one that was on the tip of my tongue, I couldn't remember, Game Night, which if you haven't enjoyed Game Night, is like absolute silliness, completely elevated by the presence of two people, Rachel McAdams and Jesse Plemons. Absolutely, that is a great stay in and watch on your TV movie if you somehow have missed Game Night.
I mean, or if there's somehow a screening ever somewhere where you could see it in the crowd, that's a great crowd movie as well. Yeah. How is that possibly profitable for the Frito-Lay company?
That's exactly the line that was in my head right now. I'm so happy that we had that same joke as a favorite.
All right. Well, coming up next, speaking of folks who are foundational movie stars and who have been in foundational movies, up next, a movie to talk about is The Rip, which was a Netflix movie that was directed by Joe Carnahan and starred Matt Damon and Ben Affleck as two police officers in Boston. Wait a minute. In Miami-Dade? Like, what? But yeah, somehow this movie was set in Miami. But this is a cops and criminals, cops are criminals, are cops criminals? Question mark. Movie that's this isn't the last one of these that we'll have. We talked about. There's the horror movie zone. There's the kids movie zone, and I think in the classic kind of dumpuary, what are the early movies of the year where things come out? This kind of crime thriller movie is definitely in there. This has a great cast besides Matt and Ben. It's got Steven Yeun, Tiana Taylor, Scott Adkins, Kyle Chandler is in a small role. And it's, Joe Carnahan, who did movies? He did Narc, he did Smokin' Aces, The Grey. None of these are movies I particularly liked, but they're all movies that exist. And it's definitely like a style. It's definitely a kind of, guy action, but like with all these morally gray areas. Again, one of them is actually just called The Grey. So, you can tell it's all about like, what does it mean to do the right thing? And so, these are, it's a squad of, it's not DEA because it's the local police, but narcotics unit police agents who are like a special unit team that go out to do stuff, and maybe they're going to do something illegal, or maybe some of them already have, or how is this going to work? Are they going to take a bunch of money that they shouldn't take, and who turns on each other and who trusts each other and all that kind of stuff. And to me this was very like actor performance driven. Like when you have a sort of 4-person team that is Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Steven Yeun, and Tiana Taylor. I mean, that's a good time. Those are 4 people I like to see act and talk to each other. There's random action bouts that go out there. There's twists and turns. This is one of those movies where I will say we sort of mashed together the list of movies. We did start with a progression through like thinking about the quality of them. I probably, if we were really ranking this would be lower on the list. I don't think this
it probably goes a little lower.
Good. But it was a fun time. And it is, it is the kind of movie, Greg said, if you're home and you want to throw a movie on, you put on game night and you have a really fun time. This is sort of, that's a much better movie than this, but this is a similar, just want to see grizzled cops like maybe being thieves and maybe doing something wrong, and then every 15 minutes there's some gunfire. Throw it on. Like, why not? And see if you can track like who's turning on whom and the twists and everything as it unfolds. I had a good time. It's this is probably the least likely to show up in Oscars watch, even though almost none of these other movies are also going to be in Oscars watch.
See Jen's recent reference to when we really thought Air was going to storm the Oscars. Matt and Ben just can't get in. So, I want to basically co-sign exactly all of that. As a part of my, I've mostly abandoned it, but my quixotic quest to keep up with the most popular on Netflix, I watch a lot of really bad Netflix originals, and this is just not that, and that elevates it. I actually think it's a pretty good one for streaming level quality, in that yes, there are movie stars and really great actors here, but I don't think it really needed the big screen treatment either. But it's really, Ben Affleck was out giving interviews where he talked about these Netflix rules where you repeat the plot every 10 minutes or whatever to help the people folding laundry. And I would say this is not dumbed down. It's still pretty great. It was great to see all those actors. I agree that the cast is really impressive. And then there is a young actress, I believe it's Sasha Calle, who plays the resident of the house where all the events unfold. And she kind of steals half the movie. She's really awesome. And you're like, it takes a lot to throw a younger actress right in the mix of all of these heavy hitters from Hollywood. And she kind of grabbed my attention and kept me watching. So is that right? Do I have
It,
the right
I mean,
actress?
it is Sasha Kali is in the movie. I believe that is. I mean, it's hard because she's Desi. Like I don't. Oh yeah, all those character names I remember from the.
Yeah, yeah.
But she looks like that would be the person. There's no one on the team who's this young.
I
So
think that's right. Apologies, listeners. It's just been many months since we saw this, but
I mean, this is the downside of covering 3 months worth of movies in one episode. Is it's like we watched this movie probably both of us watched this in early February. She's also the person who was supposed to be Supergirl if the Snyderverse had continued, but
yes, that's right.
It doesn't. So she
womp
isn't.
womp.
Instead, she gets to be a fifth or sixth build in the Rip. But a fun movie, and one you can think of. I think a better. Of this genre of the crime thriller movie would be the seemingly simply named Crime 101. Craig, would you like to set up this one?
What if you took Heat and crossed it with the Californians from SNL? Well, you would get Crime 101, a thriller about bank robberies that happen along a prominent California freeway. So this is primarily, I mean, it is an ensemble piece, but it's primarily focused around Chris Hemsworth trying to shake Thor still in some ways, and really, really doing a kind of I can be a Thomas Crown type figure, a kind of suave rich guy stereotype. And it becomes a kind of intriguing cat and mouse between fellow Marvel alum Mark Ruffalo and Chris Hemsworth.
He knows him from work.
Yeah. And then Halle Berry is also here among a few other notable names. And I think this for me, this film is a pretty okay film. I wouldn't say I loved it. And maybe you'll be able to talk me into giving it a little bit of higher praise. But I would say it manages to do kind of, it wants to be Heat, but it's really not of that level. I would say a couple of the action set pieces are really good, and a couple of the twists and turns are pretty good. Oh, Barry Keoghan's here. I almost forgot. Barry Keoghan showing up, also a Marvel alum.
That's true.
Would know him from work, except the internals weren't invited to the Christmas party. But there's a way in which his plot line is really interesting because he's kind of spinning on his own and messing up the plans of all the other plot lines. My main complaint here, I don't want to repeat myself, but I feel like this needed one big action set piece, like a really good car chase to cap off the film, and it ends up being kind of a talky third act, which works in various degrees, but I was like, oh, it's going out with a whimper instead of a bang, and I kind of wanted a bang. So that's my main complaint. But again, this is another MGM release, I believe. So it's on Amazon Prime now at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make any high claims for this movie. It's better than The Rip is about the level at which I'm willing to sort of advocate for it. But yeah, again, this it's very genre dependent. If you like that idea of like, oh, it's a criminal who's trying to do things the right way, and then a cop who's trying to stop him and figure out like, who is this guy and how they both are trying to work the system to make things happen with various people coming in and out. I will just note, because I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, in addition to the four people who are on the poster who Greg mentioned, there's also Long Take Review recent fave Monica Barbaro, right, who's in this, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Corey Hawkins, and Nick Nolte doing his best RFK Jr. voice, which may or may not just be Nick Nolte's voice now, but he's a real gravelly. He's a nut caught in a grinder, like a not a almond, but anyway, a piece of metal. Anyway, there's something to just that is very fun. In addition to wanting to be Heat, it is very explicitly within the text draws parallels between itself and two Steve McQueen movies, both Bullet and the original Thomas Crown Affair. So it's in that zone. There's also a little bit of, there was a window where I was like, is this whole movie going to feel like the first like 10 minutes of Drive, the Nicholas Winding Refn movie with Ryan Gosling. It doesn't do that, and it doesn't get, I don't think, to the level of any of those movies, because those are all better movies than this. But this is a fun time, and I enjoy this kind of criminal twists and turns. This is one of those things where this is the tradition of this opening part of the year is occasionally there's some movies that really rise up, and we're going to get there. We've got a few more left. I think we really like. But a lot of times there's these movies that are just like, they're fine. If we want to use a baseball analogy, they're not hitting home runs, but they're getting on base. They got a single, maybe they got a double, maybe they just walked, but they didn't get out. And you're not like regretting the fact that you spent time with this. I will asterisk that with one note, which is I believe Jasmine thought she wasted her time with both this movie and with The Rip. She was just like, that's dumb. Like, this was not fun. So I think that might be a genre based thing, that she's not as into this kind of movie as I am. I will also say that with this movie, we end up with a nice pairing here. Obviously, there's this in The Rip in terms of like cops and criminals and working together, but there's also this in Send Help in terms of movies with like no doubt unquestionably attractive women who are told by their bosses you're not attractive enough to work in this, or like people don't like you because you're unattractive, because like a key subplot of this movie is Halle Berry being too old to be attractive to the men that like work with her insurance company. And it's like, okay, that's at least they gave Rachel McAdams some prominent moles to try to look like, and like tuna fish on her face to look less appealing, but Halle Berry just looks like Halle Berry. It's like, yeah, okay. And they're like, we have this younger woman, and it's like, that woman shouldn't even be able to talk to Halle Berry. Like, what are we talking about? But it's nice. It's nice that they're the heart's in the right place in terms of trying to tell a story about people who are being sidelined for sexist reasons and ageist reasons. But it's great to have Halle Berry in this movie, and she does a fun job in it. But like, that was, we were mostly laughing at that anytime that those plotlines were coming up.
Well, and I think what I'm hearing from our conversations, we probably should have put Send Help above these two, and maybe that's where I would rank them. But I do agree with you completely that like, I don't go to the movies in January and February expecting greatness. And so generally like a solid 3.5 stars is enough to be like, yeah, that was worth my time tonight. And I think everything we've talked about is at least that, or if not a little higher. So that, just calibrate that way. I'll also be the one to say, I thought this made LA look cool. Maybe it doesn't if you're a native, but I was like, oh, it's nice to see some of these bridges I know from pop culture and such.
What I will say is, that every time they were in like an area where it was just like, this guy's so rich, this person's life is so nice, I was like, I don't really know where that is. And every time it was like, look at this down in his luck cop, look at this scuzzy area where these criminals are meeting up. I'm like, oh, that's right, I know where that is. I've been there all the time. So that might show that. Yeah, that might show the sort of lovelies. I will note, I felt like for the first half hour, I was like, this is doing a pretty good job with the geography of like, when people are like leaving one place and going in a direction, they end up in the right direction. And then after a little bit, there's a car chase where it's like, this doesn't make any sense. And someone leaves one area and I'm like, this is insane. So I will say that I believe Speed is the only movie that I've seen that I feel like accurately connects the different parts of LA in the sequence of events that happened in the movie in a way that logically makes sense. It's like, oh, okay. And maintains all of its action. But
well, and just to confirm for me, this is the movie where there's a part where they're on the roof of one of the hotels near the Oscars, right? Isn't that this movie? Or is that something else?
Is that this? I don't know if that is this movie. I don't remember that, but it's also possible.
It says everything that I can't remember, but there's like a foot chase with a waiter and they end up on the roof. What movie am I talking about?
Maybe.
Right. I'll do some Googling next time it's not my turn to talk.
I do feel like there was times on the roof. Well, unfortunately, you can't Google yet because the next movie is the second movie that I haven't seen yet, and it's How to Make a Killing, which is directed by John Patton Ford and stars Glenn Powell. And I don't know much about it, so I'm going to throw it to you, Greg.
You're filling. So, yes. So this actually is another one that falls in the category of, better than it felt like it would be, right? So, broadly speaking, this movie is reminiscent of the Alec Guinness movie Kind Hearts and Coronets, which also got. So, I believe the relationship here is there is a book that movie is based on, but the book is deeply, deeply anti-Semitic. So you don't talk about the book. But there's also a Broadway show that was called A Gentleman's Guide to Murder, which was very much Kind Hearts and Coronet, but with musical numbers and so on. Whereas this is essentially the same basic premise. So there's a man set to inherit a large amount of money, but there are 8 people between him and that fortune, and he sets about killing the people standing between him and that fortune. And stars Glenn Powell, like you said. Margaret Qualley is also here. Another continuing the theme. There's like, wow, Margaret Qualley's so hot, I want to date her, but I'm stuck dating Jessica Henwick. And you're like, oh my God, she's incredible. Like, why would you be stuck dating her? Like, she's a little bit of a dream girl in the movie. It's a little less ridiculous than the Rachel McAdams Halle Berry. But in general, this is really fun. You do not get the Alec Guinness playing 8 roles thing. I think when those trailers dropped, people thought maybe Glenn Powell was doing that. But Glenn Powell is the heir who kills off maybe kills off some of the people between him and the fortune. So instead of one actor playing all those roles, as in the Broadway show and the Alec Guinness film, you instead get like murderer's row of really fun cameos being absolutely ridiculous. So Topher Grace is here playing a kind of mega church pastor celebrity and leaning into how, his own kind of brand of celebrity to be there. Probably my favorite would be Zach Woods of Silicon Valley and the Office. He plays a like Nepo baby artist who can be really into his photography because he's never had to think about how money works ever in his life, and leans really well into that character. And most significantly most recognizably is Ed Harris, who, not quite on the level of the women bodybuilders movie that I'm forgetting the name of. What was that one? With Katie O'Brien and
Love Lies Bleeding.
Love Lies Bleeding. Because he was really fun in that, and it's not a totally dissimilar role, and he gets like one really good scene. So he's not as prominent, but he's really great in this, and it's really fun. I mean, I did not leave this thinking like, wow, this is really wonderful, and this did inform our recent conversation about how maybe Glenn Powell's agent should tell him it's okay to not dress up in funny wigs and hats. But like Glenn Powell is charming, and it's really fun to see him kind of taking on these characters for different beats and kind of sneaking his way into the lives of these people. And it generally works really well. I think this is an A24 release, so it should be hitting HBO soon. So I would, whatever Friday night this comes on, it would probably be after Pillion, because I think it came out like a week or two after Pillion. Definitely worth your streaming time, if not your dollars, because I think it is only on premium VOD right now. This is a $6 rental, not a $15 rental. That's my level of endorsement.
This is a $6 movie. Yes, I will admit I did not spend the $20 to watch this after having spent $20 on a couple of the other movies that we discussed. I was like, I could wait on this one. I will say, as an avowed fan of Kind Hearts and Coronets, the 40s movie, I was disappointed when it was like, oh, so they're not doing the Alec Guinness gimmick, which is, someone playing each of the victims. But I guess now that hearing you just say it, I guess I do like that they twisted it, because like if they just got someone to play, that it would be like, oh, I guess you're not as good as Alec Guinness, like, which seems like it could be kind of tough. And so having the idea of the killer being the one who puts on different costumes and goes into different places, which is sort of in the original. It's not costumes, but it's kind of different, manners, at least.
Yeah.
That go into that is, that does make sense. I will note, because I just was looking at this while you were talking, and this is partly why I was thrown by the Love Lies Bleeding question. I had literally just read this sentence, which was Ford's screenplay originally appeared on the 2014 Blacklist under the title Rothschild. In 2019, a director named John S. Baird signed on to direct the film with Shia LaBeouf and Mel Gibson starring. So probably good that version wasn't made with a movie
Wow.
called Rothschild, starring Mel Gibson and also Shia LaBeouf. So yeah, the after that, the writer of the screenplay said, "I will direct this myself," and got Glenn Powell and the other people to agree. So good job by you. His other movie was Emily the Criminal, which
Oh,
was
yes.
I
I
don't think
haven't seen
was
that, but I've heard it's excellent.
yeah, I don't think that was exclusively a Netflix movie, but I remember seeing it. It was a Sundance movie that got some Indie Spirit Award buzz. It apparently won best first screenplay, I should say, for John Patton Ford, and starred Aubrey Plaza. And that was good. That was a good movie. And having, again, in the line with the other things we're talking about, where it's like, this is not a 5-star masterpiece, but Emily the Criminal was a solid 3.5-star movie for me. Some people really loved it, and they loved it more than that. So yes, I will gladly see this. I will also take the opportunity to once again plug for those who are maybe into older movies, or like the idea of seeing older movies, or like the idea of, I know Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and like, what was he like before then? But I don't want to commit to all like 3 hours of Bridge on the River Kwai. Going to, watching Kind Hearts and Coronets is not a bad move, because you get to see him do 8 different roles, and part of the humor of it is how he embodies these different characters and takes on their different personas. So yeah, and the inherent story, it's unfortunate. I did not realize that the original book was had some offensive elements to it. Although I guess maybe I shouldn't be surprised if it's some book from whatever, the 1900s. And I mean, by that I mean it's from 1907, not like before 2000. But that, like, it's the idea of there's someone who's sort of an outcast in the family for reasons that are not his fault, finding a way to climb up in the social class by murdering people. It's a fun story. That's a fun basis for a story. I don't mind they did it again.
Yeah, and fun is the exact right word. This will not be part of Oscars watch, but they make it fun, and Glenn Powell is clearly having a good time. I actually think Margaret Qualley is doing exactly what she's been asked to do, but doesn't fit in. And it feels a little more in line with her Drive Away Dolls and the other Coen movie.
Yes, Honey Don't.
She was in. Yeah, Honey Don't. And so I think she's in a very interesting moment, coming off of The Substance, and obviously very, very talented, but like I want her to be a little pickier than she's being lately at what they ask her to do, because I bet it's really fun being kind of a vamp, but like she can do so much more. But
yeah.
Hey, let's transition to movies we will wholeheartedly endorse, I believe.
Let's do it. We got 2 more.
Again, we're setting aside Project Hail Mary, but probably other than that, these are probably the 2 best movies that have come out this year. So PT, take us into the first one.
The first one is the title is a little bit of a mouthful. It is called Nirvana. I don't know, and I am, for some reason, the double N's in Nirvana is throwing me off, and I'm saying it weird every time I've said it before and during recording. But Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, and what I will say at first is it kind of would be great for you to just watch this movie and don't know anything about it. So maybe don't listen to anything we're going to say, apart from the fact that we recommend it. But we will stick with our rules of whatever it is in the trailer we can discuss. But this is a Canadian comedy movie. It is a follow-up to a TV show, an independent TV show that was on a Vice network in Canada for 2 seasons, called Nirvana, the band, the show, that was in and of itself an adaptation of a web series in the very sort of late 2000s, like burst of online comedy after YouTube was like established. This started. It was also called Nirvana, the band, the show, but with Nirvana spelled correctly. And once it went to TV and then to a movie, they had to misspell Nirvana to underscore the joke. And the idea of all of these is it's these 2 guys, Matt Johnson and Jay McCarroll, who play fictionalized versions of themselves. Matt Johnson directs it, and they both co-wrote it. And they are in a band ? Which is just Jay McCarroll playing piano and Matt Johnson making up like sort of songs, but also just little like performance art speeches, and trying to get a gig at a very, very small club in Toronto. Like I looked up the club, and it's like, I was like, what is this like in terms of places I've lived? It's like half the size of the Paradise in Boston, Greg, if that speaks to you. But it's like clear, it's like their dream, and they think they've made it big if they get a gig there. And so this has apparently been the driving focus. I have not seen, before I saw the movie, I had not seen any other installment of this. And what this movie opens with the first minute of the original web series, which is the two guys set in, filmed in 2008, and it's, says it's in 2008. And then it jumps to now where they're still doing this, and they're still trying to get their gig at the Rivoli. And then in the process of the things they try to do to get that gig, this becomes a time travel movie where they go back in time to 2008, and they start interacting with outtakes of their own web series of themselves when they're younger. And then like that's as far as I want to go in terms of describing the sort of the mechanism of things, beyond the fact that then their friendship and how they interact with each other and what they mean to each other and the ways in which they tolerate but also are frustrated by each other, like, is a core, like that's the thematic through line, is just sort of what's up with their friendship and how that works. That is actually, like, I think it's very touching and can be very like nice in a way that you wouldn't expect from what is this sort of weird combination of improv and almost like guerrilla filmmaking and like outside skits and pranks, where a lot of the people they interact with, that's not just in the small rooms where they film themselves, are just random people that they find or have pulled off the street to talk to them. So, it has some of that element, which again feels very 2000s, about like, we just go out and we do like wacky things and see how people react. That is in line with sort of Sacha Baron Cohen TV shows and films, as well as like Tom Green back in the day.
I was gonna say, I thought a lot about Tom Green, and it might have been the Canadian connection, but and I know he just did a doc that kind of was him trying to explain what happened all those years. Which
yes,
part of me wants to watch in fascination. So yeah.
So I thought this was great. Greg is right. We're down to the last two movies of this episode plus Project Hail Mary. These three are my three favorite. I might have this one as my favorite of those three. Wow. Personally, yeah, it was a really fun time. And having heard a lot about this for the last few months, I spent the first like 20 or 30 minutes being like, this is okay. Like, it's fine, whatever. Yeah. And then as things started to really kind of pile up and ramp up and unfold, I was just there's one moment in this, which I would, even if we were doing full spoilers, I would be embarrassed to say, was my favorite moment. But Jasmine and I were watching it, and we laughed for like, 10 minutes later, we started laughing again about something that had happened 10 minutes earlier, even though a bunch of other funny things had happened, just because this one random thing occurred. So, Greg, what are your thoughts on this? I think I compelled you to watch this as we approach the episode.
You did. I mean, I'd certainly seen it was popular. So my exposure to this movie actually began in November or so, where the local theater I go to here in town, the Coolidge Corner Theater in Brookline, Massachusetts, they had these guys come present their movie, and I did not understand what it was. I saw the name and I was like, I don't understand what's going on. And then I, went one day and it said, hey, we're having these guys. And then like, I don't have the actual information in front of me, but I feel like they ended up doing like 3 sold out shows in the main theater. And I was like, instantly like, okay, so this is a thing I don't belong to. And it very much felt like I felt during the Iron Lungs moment. We're not talking about that movie tonight, but that's a YouTuber who has a massive following, putting all his money into adapting a video game, and it was a pretty decent sized hit for that. So it felt like the same thing, like, oh, there's this cool club that I'm not a part of. I guess I don't need to see that. And then again, as I watched the Letterboxd most popular, it's been hanging out for a long time since it came out and averaging very well. So I threw it on. I think I only knew about the time travel because the little clip that played on iTunes before I hit purchase, or as I hit purchase, revealed it was the trailer, so it revealed that. And it spoke so deeply to my specific like age and knowledge. And I mean, I don't think we need to hide that we're 2 middle-aged white guys who absolutely love Back to the Future. So all of the jokes worked exactly as best as they could. And I definitely laughed a lot more than I expected to. Silly things. There are a couple moments where the drink Orbitz makes a very prominent appearance, and
Mhm.
I was like, my wife Rachel passed through the room. I was like, look, they're talking about Orbitz, and she's like, I haven't thought about Orbitz in easily 30 years, nor did I need to. And yet it's that kind of like how specifically observed. Actually, so I just was reading the screenplay book that A24 put out for I Saw the TV Glow. And I
Mm.
immediately thought of the Fruitopia soda machine. I was like, the Orbits is in that same time and that same specificity and just like so brilliantly observed. And I thought that when Orbits was just sitting there, and then Orbits became part of the plot. So it was a really, really fun time. I think anybody who's probably like a 20 something would be like, this is so dumb. What is this? I don't get these guys. But I actually really agree with you that when the jokes are flying so heavily and there's like a really decent bit of heart and message, it's really impressively done. And um, when I was trying to then explain to my wife what was going on, I didn't know all that history you just laid out, and I guessed some of it, but I was like, it's like they did a Boyhood for the stupidest premise ever. and that's not wrong. And it makes more sense that they had the footage already. Like, it kind of felt to me like they'd filmed a bunch of this in 2008 and then waited
Right, and then
25
forgot.
years and
Yeah.
then did the rest 17 years. But highly endorsed. I paid this is apparently my metric of the night. I paid the full $15 to rent it, and I was like, I should have done the 20 to own it. I probably
Yeah.
should have, because I would watch this a few more times.
Is there a way? Can you do an upgrade? Like, can you do like, okay, now that I've seen it, they should let you do that. Be like, I
They
watched
should
the movie.
absolutely. They would get so much more money from me personally if they did
Yes.
that. But
Although I said that and then remembered that I was reading some things about this, and the director said that they've already recorded a commentary for the Blu-ray, and that they would have a bunch of making of stuff
oh,
on the
cool.
Blu-ray. And just there's a great interview that was on a Big Picture episode when this came out mid-February, early to mid-February. That it's terrible because it's like Netflix has dropped out of purchasing Warner Brothers, and Paramount will own it, and also Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. And so it's like not like an episode that I listened to immediately. So I was like, I don't need to hear all this bad news, but it is buried in there. There is a lot about this movie, and it's the director has done a couple of other found footage movies, and so he's Matt, he's one of the main characters, and Jay is a musician, and he does the score for these movies. And then they did the movie Blackberry from a few years ago,
Oh, right, yeah.
about the sort of founding of BlackBerry, with Jay Baruchel and Glenn Howerton, and I guess Matt Johnson is in it, and Jay McCarroll does the score, and the person who's filming them in this movie, who is referred to and seen a couple times but doesn't have any lines, is the cinematographer, because they all work together. And he said he did that movie so he could get the money to make a film to get a third season of his show, because the network it was on in Canada it folded. And so he was like, okay, well, no one will do this. I need to make money. And to make money, I have to make a movie that's successful enough to make the TV show. And they made an entire movie that they scrapped. That's going to become part of a season of their TV show, where they toured around America. This is why they have an RV, which I just assumed they have an RV in the story, but they have it because they made a different movie. And then when they were like, this isn't working, like it just feels more like the show, it doesn't feel like a bigger story, someone was going back and watching old outtakes of the original, the old web series, and looking through it, and there was a moment that wasn't, I guess it wasn't in the web series, but was in the outtakes, where they're leaving a scene, and then they turned and they looked at a American Apparel kind of like sexy guy poster, and one of them goes, hey man, that guy looks like me, and then the other one goes, no man, that guy looks like me, as a joke, because it's like these sexy guys. And they were like, oh, we should do, and then everything came like, we should do a movie where Us Today goes back and sees them. Why would that happen? And then everything else came out from that. So yeah, it's building it. It's this sort of, it's a weird parallel, but it reminds me of hearing Vince Gilligan talk about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and Pluribus, where they keep a catalog of stuff that has been randomly mentioned across their seasons. And then they will say, okay, like this random throwaway line that was from 3 years ago, what could that mean? And should that be something we explore this year? And then going back and filling it in to make it look like we planned this all along. But in actuality, they're just using this like sort of almost found material of themselves. So yeah, crazy that they made it. And then there's also some like, I mean, I don't think there's actually stunts. I don't actually know. That's why I want to see behind the scenes stuff. I think there's a lot of sort of, green screen and CGI elements in here.
Some nice trickery, but it is effective in the moment.
Yes, really but there's definitely things where it's like, oh, like they talked their way past security at a major Toronto landmark with something that could cause a lot of damage once they got inside. And like that's interesting. Like how did that work and how did that turn out?
Yeah.
We got one last movie after all of this. And Greg, why don't you take it away? You tell us.
I would love to. So this was probably the first big release of the year that I had been looking forward to. And it is, because I do want to say the title right away as promised, it is 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, directed by Nia DaCosta, she of The Marvels and the Candyman reboot. And I'm missing something else in there. Oh, Hedda. Oh, sorry, Antonio. Hedda, director of Hedda. Oh God, I heard him screaming somehow already. So this is the second part of a trilogy of 28 Years Later. Well, I guess I should say a planned trilogy of 28 Years Later films. I think the third one is technically still up in the air. And I will say that the box office for this was not good. It was a major drop off from the first one to this one, which could also be putting out a splashy zombie movie in June versus a splashy zombie movie in January. But I will say, other than Project Hail Mary, this is my number one movie of the year. And there is one reason and one reason alone. And that reason is named Ralph Fiennes, who puts in an all-time banger of a performance. And people who are longtime listeners know I'm a Grand Budapest diehard endlessly. I think this is my favorite movie I've ever seen him in. And what I love is it's like, it is just, he commits. Like he treats this material like it's Shakespeare and just commits in every single way. So people who may not be familiar, so Ralph Fiennes was in the first one, and the first one featured the story of a young boy struggling to live in this long post-apocalyptic world, and his character eventually encounters Ralph Fiennes, who is a doctor who is living in the wild and connecting with the big, scary, giant genitaled zombie friend of his. And then this movie continues the story of the little boy, but actually moves Ralph Fiennes to the center and tells the story of him as well as the gang of men and women that picked up the young boy. So the story kind of unfolds. I want to keep it pretty vague, but I will just say there is absolutely, Ralph Fiennes is on my LTR list already, written in ink for next year, because I think this is an all-time performance. He just listens to Duran Duran, tries to heal zombies, and builds bone palaces. But there is one sequence, I could try to spoil it, but it'd be even hard to do so just because it's so down the road and confusing. But there is a moment where I was like standing and pumping my fist, like, this is incredible. I cannot believe I live in a time when I get to see this on the big screen and hear this on the big screen. And it does end on a little bit of a cliffhanger. I will say there is a surprise appearance at the end of this movie that I think was well publicized in the press. And I know that because the before movie slideshow said, this actor appears in blah, 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 blah.
No.
And I was like, oh, I thought that was a surprise for this movie. And sure enough, it was a last 3 minutes reveal of the movie that the before movie slideshow had spoiled for the audience in my theater. But I thought this was a banger. I actually, it made me reappreciate Nia DaCosta. I continue to assert that The Marvels is a mess, but when she was allowed to cook, I think it's actually a pretty good movie. And then Marvel got in the way trying to build out its universe and blah, blah, blah. So, and Hedda was excellent, Antonio. And it made me go back. I think she only has 5 films. North Woods, I think, is the one we're missing. And
I think that's right.
So I went back and filled in her filmography, and she's doing great work, and I'm really excited to see her continue as a filmmaker. The gap between Hedda and 28 years later, Bone Temple, you could drive that Nirvana, the band, the show, RV right through that gap.
Yep.
And yet she nails both just incredibly well. So
Mhm.
I love this movie. PT, what did you think?
I also loved it. I will say her first movie is called Little Woods, which
Little
I've
Woods,
also
excuse
not
me.
seen. I also actually I haven't seen her version of Candyman. I do want to check that out. But I think, yeah, I agree with you that the elements of the Marvels that looked great. I was like, oh, this feels like this is the director's movie as opposed to the franchise. And then Hedda and this movie are both really great. I still stand by the joke I made when you said that you hadn't seen Hedda, but it must be really different from the Bone Temple. And I was like, that's because you don't expect the Bone Temple that appears in Hedda. And no one thought that was funny because we were like 10 hours into the LTRs. But in any event, no, I thought this was this was excellent. And it was, it's weird because it's the second movie in a trilogy. It's the fourth movie in a series because there's 28 Days Later and then 28 Weeks Later, made by people unaffiliated with 28 Days Later, I think, for the most part. And then the screenwriter and filmmaker came back for 28 Years Later. And now, Alex Garland's still writing, when he's not off making his own movies, Civil War, Warfare, Ex Machina, a bunch of other things. He's writing these zombie movies occasionally for Danny Boyle and now Nia DaCosta. It does say on Wikipedia that in December a green light was given for the third movie. So there was a sort of, if this movie does well, we'll do a third one. And then before it came out, they said they were doing it, and then it came out and did poorly. So I don't know what that means. But yeah, I mean, this was great because it's such a clear continuation of what happens in the previous movie, but also that brings so many other characters to the forefront that I am embarrassed to admit that it took me like a third of the movie to realize that, like, oh, the new kid in the gang is the kid from the first movie. Like, because I was so focused on Jack O'Connell, who I don't think we've mentioned yet necessarily, who has a cameo. He's the person who's the cameo at the end of 28 Years Later, sort of shows up as like the bookend of the grown-up version of the kid you saw at the start of that movie. And he's leading a gang based on with a attire and mannerisms and slogans based on a person who was very famous in England at the time when 28 Days Later was made, who has now in the intervening years been revealed to be a huge monster who was a terrible person. So that's an interesting little element in there. So, but like, he's here as the leader of the gang, and Ray Fiennes is continuing his doctor role, and they're kind of the two main forces that are at play in this movie, and they each have these sort of new proteges, I guess. Spike from the first movie, and then our infected friend Samson, our well-endowed infected friend, who's around. And yeah, it was really good, and it was like, it carries forward the themes, the look, the visuals, and again, obviously some of the characters and performances of the previous movie, but does feel distinct and different enough as a Nia DaCosta movie to be, I think, really successful on its own. And like the way it's exploring the themes and the way it carries some stuff forward. And, it has that first movie to like establish a bunch of things and lay some groundwork that let it to just kind of build on top of that foundation, which is really good, is really smart. And, again, we won't discuss the details of it, but I was not in a theater again, unfortunately. I waited until it's on Netflix. This movie is now available on Netflix, as is its predecessor. So and I believe the original 28 Days Later. So if you wanted to watch all three of those, you could. That, like, when that moment hit, I was just like, again, high on the cackle meter, high on the enjoyment meter. We talk about needle drops in movies. This is a great movie where there's like a character doing the needle drops because you see him put on his records for his montages or his sequences when he's going to work on stuff. And we get those Duran Duran songs. We get those 80s. And we get that he's a guy who listened to music in the 80s and then was willing to get into Radiohead in the late 90s, but that's it. Like, that's the only thing from after 1992 that he purchased was a couple Radiohead stuff. So yeah, this is really good. I have absolutely no no problem with anyone saying this is their top movie of the year so far. For me, it's definitely, again, it's in this top three. I might lean to Nirvana, just for that style a little bit more, and then it's between the fact that it's between this and Project Hail Mary. I think for most of the folks who have listened to that episode will see that's high praise, because this is really great.
Well, and I will take the transition. Previous quick takes, we tried to do a little Oscars watch, and we've mostly neglected this, and I think that is fine. I don't think there's a lot here that will belong in the Oscar race, but I mean, it's always like, how bad of a year of movies do we need for some of these to make it onto the list?
Right.
But like, do you think there's a chance Ralph Fiennes gets remembered at any of these later award shows, or is it just it's too weird and it's didn't make enough money, people will forget?
It's hard because it didn't even come out in like mid-February. It came out like January 10th. It was super early in the year. I think that the sequence of events would probably have to be a bunch of hyped performances by actors, by the leading men in movies, where the movies come out and people are like, nope, we don't like that. And there's that kind of sequence of like, okay, it's a pool of like 10 people who might get nominated for Best Actor, and like 7 of them get wiped out because the movies aren't very good and critics don't really like it. And then it's like, okay, well, now what? And then it could be like, wait a minute, what about Ralph Fiennes?
Yeah.
My guess is it's probably going to be more of everyone being like, why is no one talking about this? This is one of the best performances of the year. And then it doesn't actually go anywhere besides the letters, where I have a feeling he'll get enough nominations to move on to the final round, if not actually winning. Besides that, then I don't know. Like, would there be like visual effects for this movie? Like, again, is it sort of like, are enough of the movies that are big visual effects movies like not going to pan out? But we have the Odyssey, we have Dune, and we have some big franchise stuff that's coming around. I think that might be a little bit tough, but I think he'll be there on the outskirts. And at this time last year, we were like, man, wouldn't it be great if Michael B. Jordan got nominated for an Oscar? But like, no one will remember Sinners, that came out in March. Like, that would be crazy. And now look where we are. So I don't know. There might need to be a big campaign of actually Ralph Fiennes has never won an Oscar, and then you have to get over the hill of the folks who would be like, so we didn't give him an Oscar for Schindler's List or The Constant Gardener or Grand Budapest Hotel or A Bigger Splash, but we gave it to him for The Bone Temple. Like, that's what we gave it to him for.
Yeah. I can see it making it as, so many critics, when they do their top 10 performance of the years, they like to do that one zag that gives them a little cred. I see him showing up a lot there, right? Like, and hey, by the way, this movie you all ignored, he was really excellent in. And the reviews of Bone Temple were pretty strong. It's not like critics thought it was bad. I think mainly the public was not in a horror mood, and anybody who was really serious about going to movies had just gotten the Oscar nominee list and was starting to check that off.
Right.
And they just skipped Bone Temple. So I think the mistake would have been, if you had saved it for maybe now. I mean, we're kind of in this quiet moment between Hail Mary, counter programming to Mario, but between Hail Mary and Devil Wears Prada 2, there's not a lot for adults right now. So it would have been a smart kind of Sinners window to sneak it into. But I don't think anybody will remember him, but that's okay. We'll always have him, and it works.
Now, to clarify, do you feel that this is your favorite performance of his, or do you think this is your favorite movie that he has been in? When you said it's the best Ralph Fiennes movie.
I think it was. I mean, no, I don't think it's the best of all those, but I do really think it was bold and audacious. And so his other movie recently, I didn't see it, but it was like, I'm an English choir master helping World War I boys feel good about themselves before they go to war. And it's like, I don't want that BS from my Ralph Fiennes. I want Ralph Fiennes to be out there doing something weird, something wild.
Yes.
In the Wes Anderson Roald Dahl ones, there were those little moments where the facade of Roald Dahl snuck away and he was like, give me my goddamn cigarettes or whatever. Yeah. And you're like, yes, like I like that. I like that weirdness. So absolutely not my favorite Ralph Fiennes performance, but like it was so shocking. And like how old is he? He's probably 70s, late 60s, mid 60s. I'm not positive, but the fact the fact that he's like doing a whole movie coated in iodine, he's naked a couple times. You see Rafe's Fiennes, and then is I there's so many things I want to say, but he's doing that level of performance at age 63, which of course I knew, and you didn't feed me in Google in the chat.
Mhm.
But it was really wonderful and such a shock and a surprise. So I hope people check it out. I hope it becomes a Netflix hit because he deserves it, and I look forward to seeing this trilogy closed out because I think both have delivered a good time.
Now, of course, Greg, don't forget we'll see him again this year in the Hunger Games: Sunrise on the Reaping, a movie
Oh,
we all remember
ooh.
exists and that he's going to be in. That he's the Donald Sutherland character.
I
He's
was gonna say,
president.
who is he older than or younger version of?
He's the younger version of Donald Sutherland. So yeah, you have to
Which
get to
just
Donald
doesn't make
Sutherland.
sense in my head, but yes,
No,
it works. So,
no.
and I'm sure he'll nail it because he always nails it. Like,
Yep.
you know, if you're doing the Hall of Fame of Ralph Fiennes, you have to give room over to Voldemort, and it's like,
Yeah.
you forget he killed it at that too. Like he's
Oh
just
my God.
always dependable and so good. He'd be another one that would be great to do a whole filmography watch for a Letterbox project. So.
I mean, he would, except for, well, I mean, some of these are short films because some of these Wes Anderson ones are showing up. But like, there's a few things mixed in here where it's like, like Doolittle, the Robert Downey Jr. Doolittle. He's one of the animals.
I mean, everybody's an animal in that.
True.
Ralph Fiennes innocent.
Yes, I forgot he's Alfred in the Lego Batman movies. That's fun.
Oh yeah, that's
and of course he's M in the James Bond, the Daniel Craig Bonds. He's in Clash and Wrath of the Titans.
I know Ryan Johnson's listening. Can you let's cast him as the Moriarty type figure to Benoit Blanc?
I like that.
I'm listening. We could find a way to make that work, even though I know that's crossing different franchises. But
that's okay.
Like a rival detective, totally work. All right.
I think
Thanks,
that
Ryan.
I think that Ryan Johnson would appreciate the crossing of franchises. The only other thing I will note in our Oscar watch thing, I don't think Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie is going to get any traction. I would love for it to get an editing nomination just because of how they spliced all this footage together. Maybe that won't be feasible once we see the rest of the movies for the year. But I will note that the Canadian Screen Awards, which seems to be at least aiming to be the Canadian version of the Oscars, it is nominated for 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 in 8 categories, and that includes Best Original Song for the Alphabet Song. And I'm just saying that for Greg to know, because Greg remembers the Alphabet Song from the movie, and it's very funny that it got nominated for Best Original Song. Amazing. So I'm maybe some Indie Spirit Awards for that one when it comes time, and hopefully Rafe is remembered when it comes around. But otherwise,
critic list. That's what I'm saying.
I think you're right. I think it'll be there'll be a couple of like city critics groups that give him Best Actor and are like, "What's up?"
Yeah.
And that's a great thing. But for the most part, just fun movies. Pretty good to very good, with those last couple movies being excellent times at the movie. Anything to add, Greg, before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I will certainly plug, people should keep up. If you want to see full reviews of what both of us have seen, you should check out me on Letterboxd. I'm at Ion Cannon, EYEONCANON. PT is at PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF. Ooh, I don't usually do your plug.
Off the top of your head. Not bad.
And then the show is at LTR Pod, where you can see some of this material. So it's been a great spring at the movies. We appreciate Jen giving us the keys to the studio for a week where we could do a little of this. PT, I was going to plug what's coming up next week, but I don't think we've decided. Should we decide on air right now, and Jen will find out when she edits?
I mean, I think that we could do that. First, I will. I will say, is it Devil Wears Prada 2? Is that next week? Is that when it's coming out?
No, that's like May 2nd. So we got a little while.
Oh my God! Let me look at the.
I think we're gonna do the drama. That's my guess.
Oh, is that? Yeah, that's right. Because that isn't out yet for you to be able to see it, right? I think that's been out.
No, it's out wide. It's out wide. Or it's at least out here in Boston where it's set. I don't know if they gave it to us early. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to do the drama. I think that makes sense. And then I think we have to either get someone in from the guest list, or we have to maybe we'll do an Oscar Ferry flashback. I don't know. I don't know if that's already
just a little filler before the summer movie season really gets going at the end of the
month. I mean, there's also, there was some in the past. There have been times when if we had like a new Indiana Jones movie. I don't have the sound bite, so I can't drop it. Jen, if you want to add it. Perfect. That sounded. Jen did it because that's how it sounds. That we did like an Indiana Jones retrospective. I remember we did a Mad Max or Furiosa. Like in theory, we could try to do like a pre-Devil Wears Prada for the first Devil Wears Prada, but I think maybe that we just fold that into the same episode. But I'm wondering if there's other things coming up later. Once things get tighter in the summer, are there going to be things that we want to?
We do have I Swear is coming out in April, catching up with that part of the conversation from earlier, the movie that was such a hit at the BAFTAs. And, April feels a little quiet. There's no Sinners in this April, right?
No, there is. It's Project Hail Mary. That's going to carry over. And then Super Mario Galaxy, which... I don't know if we're going to bother doing an episode of because we already talked about it here today. So what I would like to say before I throw to Greg for any further plugs is there may be something, at least at this point, before Jen has done her judicious editing. It's an hour and 40 minutes that we have been here recording. And that may seem long for a quick takes episode, but we did talk about 8 movies. So that's really only 12 minutes per movie. That's pretty quick. That's a pretty quick take, I would say. Greg, besides Letterboxd, which you've already plugged, where can folks find you and what are you up to in this season of Mall?
Oh, good point. I am covering the Mall television show over on the Rebel Base Card feed, which we do the Star Wars show reviews. And I have no idea who we have scheduled for guests, but I imagine Jen and or PT will be getting calls at some point from my co-host. And over on Through the Glass Columns, we're plugging away in book 9 of The Wheel of Time. So if you'd like to go back to the beginning and experience all of Wheel of Time in an online book club format, please do. If you think I'm smart here, wait till you hear me over there where I'm quite dumb and often forget the names of characters 5 minutes after they've been said to me. So, PT, anything you need to plug or you want to get out of here?
No, I mean, just follow the show wherever you're hearing this, wherever you're listening to the podcast, add it, plus it, heart it, subscribe, whatever the mechanism is. Please just add the show. Maybe leave a comment. Maybe tell someone that you think would like it. Some of our most adamant, fervent, communicating listeners are people who just heard about it from a friend. So why don't you tell some friends about the show? And I think that's it.
Grab our social media post if you think we left something out. If you're the real primate heads out there, the real Wuthering Heights people out there, if you think we've missed something that really belonged on this list, let us know because we like building our letterbox lists as well.
That's true.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. 2026, a year where everything is going great.
Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. You'll also receive occasional written reviews of new Star Wars and Marvel.